Thanks for tuning into this channel. This is the 2015 NC700X by Honda. Hey, if you can hit that subscribe button, I'd appreciate it. We'll get right to the video.
All right, this is the 2015 NC700X. It is actually a very beautiful bike. This bike has got, I love this black paint. It looks so clean. Taking a look at that, it's super sparkly. It's like, wow. They say sparkly. It's not like it's got sparkle in it. It's just so... it's like a mirror finish. It's awesome. Okay, so the NC700X, what kind of bike is this? Is it a dual sport? Not really. Is it an adventure bike? Well, kind of. It is kind of an all-arounder bike. It is fantastic for beginners. It's fantastic for the person that just wants to ride a motorcycle, not worry about all the other stuff. Super, super reliable motor. The motor is faced straight out forward, the cylinders are, and it has a single disc front brake on it. There's no ABS on this bike, and not a huge on the frills of all sorts of extra added on items. It is in a sense a basic motorcycle, and meant to be that way. No ABS on the rear as well. This one does have pannier racks and a rear rack, cargo rack. Pretty good for two-up seating. Now let me show you some of the unique features of this bike. Okay, so the first one, and most of you probably already know this, but hey, it is super cool, and that is it's got a frunk. All right, so that motor, we'll go down there really quick. That motor being faced forward here, and an airbox right here leaves a lot of room for a trunk. And it looks like you could fit a helmet in there. If you have a big noggin like mine, your helmet won't fit in there. It'll fit in there, but this won't close. A small and medium helmet may fit in there with this closing. It's huge though. The amount of stuff you can fit in here, I checked, and I can actually pack for 5 days with my small stove, my small tent, and the food items and the little kitchen utensils that I use, all in here. Close it up, and nobody be the wiser that I'm packed for 5 days. Pretty amazing. And that's very lightweight packing, of course. My sleeping bag is tiny, about that big. My tent is only about that big. It only weighs a pound. But with this bike, you actually have pannier systems. I don't have the boxes on there, but it's got a load of some panniers for the side and a big, large givey rack or container for the back, which gives you luggage for what, 2 months? Okay, so that's the one cool feature. The next kind of cool feature is this bike is more of a bike that you ride for the enjoyment of just being out riding. So it's not a super high revving motor. It's not difficult to ride. It's super torquey. It has a pretty low seat height on it. I'd say, here's a hello train. It's real confidence inspiring bike. Let's go over a couple of items that have been added to this bike. One is kind of obvious. Handlebars have been changed. These are kind of more of a straight across. It's called the CR High Bend, which is sort of a motocross bike. They're the Evo Pro Tapers. And so this bike, normally the bend comes back like that. This is tilted out a little bit, keeps your elbows out, and gives you a little bit more room in the cockpit. It also has bar risers on it, which raise up the bars about 2 inches. And that keeps these bars about the same as stock, because these are a really low bar and the stock bars come up, so they're about the same height as this. So it didn't really change anything in the upper geometry of this, but you can move these forward or back as you please. The next part is this windscreen, and this windscreen is an aftermarket windscreen, and it is pretty cool because of how it adjusts. Let me sit down on the bike here really quick. And you got 2 levers. You pop these 2 levers here, just loosen them, and the windscreen can come back towards you, and it can go up, so a lot higher. And I like it low and out. I get a little bit of wind, but pushing it out like that makes the turbulence just kind of right around the back of my head and just kind of keeps me in place. All right, what is the next thing? These heated grips. These are the Oxford heated grips, and they turn themselves off automatically, which is super awesome, so you don't have to worry about them. Keep your hands warm. If you forget to turn them off, they turn themselves off after about 5 minutes. Seat height, again, I was talking about that. I am completely flat-footed. I have a 32-inch inseam, and I am very comfortably flat-footed. And then something you can't see by me looking down, but I'm going to point it out by getting off the bike again. And one thing I really like about this, the foot pegs are located right here, and your legs hang down right here. So your legs fit close in, and you don't hit the pegs. On a SV650, actually the DL650, which is the V-Strom 650, the pegs are right here. So when you go to put your feet down, you've got to straddle all the way up to the outside of the pegs. So even as a low seat, you still have to straddle outside the pegs. This makes it really nice, and a lot easier to put your feet down, which is great. Passenger pegs here, of course. I think we should take it for a ride. Let's do that. All right, so like I said, I'm totally flat-footed. Let's turn that key on. Let's start right up. No drama. This is what I'm going to say. This is a no drama bike. Very easy to manage. You've got a fuel indicator, you have a gear indicator, your miles per hour, you've got a trip odometer and odometer, and then the time. So all the necessary things. We also have a rev counter there, so nothing beyond that. There are gauges up here that you can see, not gauges but lights, so in case there's a problem with the engine, that'll come on. Oil level, neutral, and water temperature, because it is water cooled, and your high beam there, and then your two indicators. So that's the extent of the instruments there. As far as turning this bike around in a parking lot, this is going to be one of the easiest bikes to manage in a parking lot. Super easy. With that engine sitting down that low in front, it keeps all the weight down. There's not a lot of weight transition on this bike, so it's really easy to manage. You don't feel like you're going to tip over. It doesn't start weighting to one side. Makes it very manageable and super easy. Now there's another aspect of this bike that is so lovely, because just think of a bike that has no troubles to ride around. And what are the one things that beginners worry about, or even experts worry about, and that's stalling a bike. All right, so hands off the throttle. If I let the clutch out, does it stall, or does it just pull me along? And it just pulls me along. See that? No drama. I don't even need to pull the use the throttle to take off. I mean, of course I need to do it to move fast, but I'm not going to stall it. I've tried to stall it, and I can. If I just let the clutch out really quick, it'll stall. But if I just kind of let it out nice and smooth, it just put along. I let it out as quick as I normally do when I'm just riding, and it feels like it's going to stall, but it just keeps going. It's just a super torquey little motor. It's a 700. So maybe that's the thing. It's not super little. Now here's the next part. So I'm shifting. It feels like a short shift everywhere I go, because you don't need to rev this thing out. 2,000 RPM, you got plenty of torque. 3,000 RPM for cruising, no problem. I'm cruising at 2,000 RPM right now in 6th gear, and it just putters along, which is awesome. It's off of 2,000 RPM. Let's go down to 2,000 RPM. There we go, and I can just get on it, and it just pulls right away. Lots of torque. Now here's the next part. Oh, better get in front of this truck. So 6th gear, from what, 25 to, you know, whatever you're going at the speed limit, and it does it great. All right, we're gonna get back out on the windy road and try to see how this thing is out on the more of the windy roads and the fun stuff. Okay. All right, hey, we're out on the twisty stuff now. Let's give it a couple of let's give it the go. Let's give it the beans. Stoplight kind of stuff. Just takes right off. You only have to pull it up to about 6,000 RPM. All the torque's down below that, and it's got plenty of get up and go. It's not extraordinarily fast, but it's got plenty of power. It's gonna be faster than any car out there, basically. I mean, you know, okay, come on, you know, there maybe your really, really fast cars. Supercars are going to be faster. It's quick. but that's not the point. This bike is a fun bike. It is a 700cc bike, so cruising this bike at 70, 80 miles an hour all day long, it's smooth as can be, and it's a trouble-free motorcycle, which is just awesome to have. So let's go over a couple of things ergonomic-wise. So this bike, with the handlebars the way it is, gives me a lot of room in the cockpit. From my chest to the bars, a lot of room. Standard version with the bars, it's a little close, and I prefer it this way. If I'm 6 foot tall, so my upper body is a little bit longer than my lower body, so if you're a little shorter, the stock bars might just be perfect because they have a little bit more pullback. And let's see, and then from the seat to the pegs, that's another position where it's say more cramped than some other standard type bikes, because the pegs are a little bit higher and they're a little bit farther back, and it gives you more cornering clearance, but it also brings your feet up a little higher. The nice thing about this one is, since they're back a little bit, your heels sort of just kind of hang on the pegs, and it's just sort of effortless just to leave your legs just kind of hanging there. So for a long distance, that's kind of nice, and it's not cramped to the point where like your knees are up in your face or something, like on a real sports bike, but it is more towards that direction. If you're coming from a sport bike and you ride this, that's what you kind of get that feeling for, whereas say like a DL, the V-Strom 650, the pegs are farther forward and you kind of have to hold your feet there. Not uncomfortable, it's just that's where they sit. Okay, and then the seat on this is firm, quite firm. And I haven't ridden long enough. You know, I've ridden this for about an hour, hour and a half, I think, total, you know, in one stint. And it wasn't ungodly uncomfortable, but I sort of felt like, yeah, it's a firm seat over, you know, 4 or 5 hours. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. I just can't tell you. You know, it's firm. And so I like firmer seats. I just don't know if it would be uncomfortable or really comfortable, because I just haven't had all that experience on it. Okay, for the passenger, they've got their own seat back there. It's at a little bit different level, and so they sort of stay separated from you, which is super nice. And it's a comfortable seating position. My wife rode on the back of this, and it was totally fine. She said she could do some distance on this, no problems. Mirrors are out far enough to stay away from your shoulders. What is the handling like? The handling's pretty good. You know, it's real nice. At speed, the bike feels very neutral, and at slower speeds, it tends to have an easier turning radius. It's just kind of dependent upon speed a little bit, and maybe your tires. Real nice and easy to turn because of big wide bars, and upright seating position just makes it real easy. The one thing I will say is that these bikes, sometimes the dealers aren't set, you know, brand new, they're not setting them up quite right. They're not going through the full setup procedure. This is the third one we've had in stock, and it is the third one that has not been set up correctly. So here's the things that weren't set up right. The throttle position wasn't set. So we reset the throttle position. That gives you about 15 to 20% more throttle throw than it does without it being adjusted correctly. It's really easy. There's a couple adjustments just underneath the throttle there, just adjusting the slack. The slack was at about a ½ an inch, where it should be at about an 1/8. And that's quite a bit, because your throw is only, you know, not quite a half a turn, right? So you're giving up quite a bit of throttle there. The next thing is the clutch. On all these have been adjusted too close to the bar, meaning you pull them in too far, so when you're letting them out, you don't let the clutch out completely. So we've readjusted the clutch. It's a cable clutch, super easy to adjust. The suspension, though there's no adjustments with the suspension, when these are shipped, they are shipped with the fork tubes pushed up in the triple clamps. It makes them fit in the crate better. They're not supposed to stay that way. So a couple of them we had were a little worse than others, but they should be set within like a 1/16 of an inch to the top of the triple clamp, and or level. And usually I find them and they are about a 1/2 inch to an inch up, and the problem that does is it rakes the bike down. It changes your cornering clearance, so you don't have as much clearance in cornering. It feels like the bike's a little bit lower, and you can lower this bike. So you could lower it by lowering the forks, or bringing the fork tubes up in the triple clamps, and then in the rear you would get a longer extension on the shock little levers, and that lowers the bike evenly instead of raked. When you rake it, it tends to want to turn into corners quicker, but you're also losing that cornering clearance, so you really don't want to do that. What else? The brake pedals, and the brake lever and the shift lever. The shift levers are usually shipped correctly. The brake lever, it just kind of depends on your foot. Those could be adjusted up or down. This one was way up high, so you actually had to take your foot off the peg to activate the rear brake. And that's it. Really easy to adjust the items on this bike, and once again, kind of a basic bike, so it makes it super simple. What else do I want to mention about it? This motor revs out to 6,500 RPM, and that is max, and it's got a rev limiter at that, and it's basically just a stop right there. So it's more like a car in the way it revs, rather than like some motorcycles where it's 14,000 RPM. Most are around 8 to 10, so this is lower, quite a bit lower, so you short shift it and use that torque. I'm going to show you what happens when you hit the rev limiter, because it's set there to just stop the motor from over revving. So we go up and see how it just stops. That's it. And see, it does it again. It doesn't do any damage to the bike. It's totally fine. It's just trying to tell you, you don't need to rev this motor out that far. The power is going to happen between, the highest level of power, I believe it's between 3 and about 5,500 RPM. So shifting in there gives you the maximum amount of speed, and you just learn how to use a real torquey motor. What's the suspension like? I've heard people say that the suspension on these feels soft. Well, it's probably the rear shock not being set up for the compression dampening that you need, or the fork tubes are too far down. When it's set up level, it actually has a pretty firm ride. So it's not so firm that it's uncomfortable. It's on the firmer side, not the softer side. I hope that helps. I find it's just about right. It can do your street really well. Your dirt roads, it's soft enough for the dirt roads. It just depends what kind of tires you put on it to make it more comfortable. Standing position, and for me that's pretty good. I'm bent over quite a bit, so I bend my knees a bit, but the bars are in a good position to do that. So for a lightweight, and when I mean lightweight, not like the bike's a lightweight, but a lightweight adventure bike, so if you're going to do dirt roads, some soft trails, and highway to get there, fantastic bike. And again, a 700cc motor. This motor is not stressed at all on the highway. Driving 75, 80 miles an hour all day long, this motorcycle is not stressed one bit. And that's a really nice thing. I rode a DL 650, which is the V-Strom 650, to Alaska and back, and my thought was at the end is that 650 motor was stressed a little bit when I was riding it at 80 miles an hour. Now, I could have rode a little slower, but sometimes you get bored. And so I think just a little bit more motor, or you could ride a little slower, because that V-Strom was awesome going to Alaska and back. I would say equal with this. Now the differences between these bikes, because I think they compare a little bit, this feels smaller and it feels lighter. So it's easier to touch the ground. It's narrower
and the sort of frontal area on the bike is narrower, so it's going to get better fuel economy, and it does quite a bit. And it just feels narrower to like the knees, so you're just kind of you feel like you have a tighter fit around the bike. And you know, other than that, they really do compare quite well as far as what they do well. I love how this has a trunk that is just phenomenal. I wish they do that on more bikes. It's one of the reasons I love scooters, is that you've got somewhere to put your stuff. I can go grocery shopping with this bike, no problem at all. I can stick some groceries in there, and then hey, with all the luggage that comes with this bike, I could pack the kitchen sink and go too. I mean, maybe I just put all my camera gear and lunch and stuff like that up here in the front, and then all the rest of the stuff in back. Like I said, I packed this thing out just to see if I could pack it for 5 days in the trunk, and I could do it. And that's lightweight backpacking gear, so it's not like, you know, big stove or anything. That's as lightweight as you can go, but it fits, and that's pretty cool. Hey, let's enjoy the ride for a minute. This windscreen works perfect. The air is right up over my head. I'm kind of in a pocket right here. Makes it really nice. It's an aftermarket one. The stock one's a little lower. I'd probably go with the aftermarket. That's a pretty good upgrade. Everybody's gonna ask me which one that is, so I'm gonna stop and take a look, because I don't remember. We'll take a look at that. It doesn't look like a real expensive piece of equipment, so I'd be shocked if it's expensive. It looks like it doesn't look cheap. It just doesn't look like it's real expensive. I'll put it that way. You know, the kind of, because you got, you know, these standard little tabs and stuff on it. It doesn't look like they're all custom made just for this thing. It looks like they probably pulled those from something else. Let's take a look at the bike one more time, and I'll take a look at that screen for you guys so you can see what it is. And yeah, it's a cool bike, man. Let's see here. I'll turn that off. And that screen, there it is right there. Power Bronze. Okay, I've never heard of that before, but you guys can look that up on the web. Power Bronze. That's the windscreen. It's pretty cool. You're pretty minimalist. I bet that's pretty cheap. Why do I think that? I don't know. Just seems like it. But it's adjustable up and out, which is really cool. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the Honda. That's a 2015 Honda NC700X. Boom.